everyone, welcome to the Developer User Group, our first DataDev event of 2021. So happy New Year, everyone. I hope you had a nice holidays, a nice break from work if you took some time off. So thank you all of you for joining. And yes, this session is recorded, so we will send you the recording after the session and it's going to be published on YouTube once we have the recording. So be sure to check our YouTube channel. Some logistic first. If you have any questions, don't wait until the end of the session to ask your questions. Please use the Q&A chat features on Zoom. So if you are new to Zoom, because we used to do all our events on WebEx, you don't have the record button, but you should have a Q&A button with Q&A, of course, written on it, and it's going to open this pop-up. So you can ask questions and it will make our life easier to take questions during the presentation and also at the end of the presentation. So we have time at the end of the presentation to take questions. So be sure to put your questions there. We will ask them live at the end. If you have specific questions on our APIs, or you have a question that came up later, let's say you got inspired by one of the presentation and yesterday, and like during your sleep, you're like, I wish I asked these questions. You can always ask any questions at developerprogram@tableau.com. We will answer you in a few days. So be sure to send us your questions or your feedback as well. We also have a Slack channel. So I'm going to post the link of our Slack channel, but that's also a great place to connect and ask questions to other data devs or to the engineering team. So be sure to join our Slack channel. I'm Janine Zanoli. I go by Gigi. I'm a developer advocate at Tableau. And today we are going to talk about from a non-developer to a data dev. We have two awesome speakers talking about the journey and personal tips, etc. So be sure if you have any questions, but I just want to, before to start and say, what was my journey? How did I start? And I just want to share a quick example of how I actually started in my first API project. So my first API project was 4 years ago, and it was a very basic use case. I just wanted to have my Instagram data in Tableau. I wanted to analyze the hashtag food porn because I was obsessed with food. And I was like, I wish I could like get all the picture and then I can see where I should go for food. Like it was not even an influencer thing. It was just food related. And I was like, yeah, I want to see what people are posting with the hashtag food porn. And for that, I need to build a web data connector. So that's how I started my data dev journey. But I don't think you are here to hear about my data dev journey, but about two awesome data dev, part of our communities. So we are going to start by Robert. He's going to share his data dev journey. And to share a little bit about Robert, I got to know Robert by his Twitter account. So he posted a tweet 2 months ago, I think. And say, I want to learn more about the data dev tools and the data dev community. And I want to do it with other people who is keen to get started and work on a project together. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, that's a really cool initiative. And so I reached out to Robert and I got to know what he was working on and what the different project he was working on. And I was really inspired by his journey. So it's why I asked him to join us today and talk about his data dev journey. So let me stop sharing. No, still new to Zoom. So, here's the button for stop sharing. So Robert, you should have the, perfect. I'm just going to unmute yourself. I don't think I can unmute you. I can ask you to unmute just in case we cannot hear you right now. You should have a button on top of your screen.
Nope.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Cool. All right, cool. Thanks for the intro. And yeah, this is really just going to be a talk about my career up to this point for those who don't know me, which is probably most people on the call, I'm a DataDevs engineer, I guess now, because I'm writing some version control for Tableau and I'm doing some fun stuff with our code stack. So I'm going to call myself an engineer. I have the pleasure of working remotely. I'm doing so from Santiago, Chile now, but I've done it. I've worked remotely for clients all over the planet, and that's by design. So I'm going to walk through that journey a bit, and hopefully within 20 minutes. Let's click. All right, cool. So journey began in Memphis, Tennessee. This is where I grew up. And I did not have parents who are technologists by any means, and they are still technically handicapped, I'll say that. And growing up there, I wasn't exposed to others that were into technology. I feel like it was a place where hard work was kind of the only option. At least that's how I saw it. And I did not want that for my future self, but I did put in a lot of work in Memphis. And I think maybe that's where I got some of my grittiness. But I knew I needed to learn some things if I was going to get out of that mentality, just like that being my life. So I moved as far away from Memphis as I could while still retaining in-state tuition. And that brought me to Knoxville, Tennessee. And I read a book there called The World is Flat. And that book opened my eyes to globalization. And back in 2007, globalization was not something that a lot of people were talking about, but this book really brought it to my attention and freaked me out a little bit. It's like, wow, there's people all over the world that want these jobs, and they can get them from anywhere because they have the skills. So that gave me the motivation to invest time into study in Knoxville. And I applied that study to supply chain and found a supply chain community. I think that was my first little community of like-minded people that I got to connect with. But after Knoxville, I made a bet on an internship in Atlanta. Didn't get an internship until I graduated, which was unfortunate, but it was between an internship in a big city or a full-time position in a small town. And I made the bet on the big city because of the higher probability of connecting with people that thought like me, who wanted to grow, who wanted to leverage technology. That was going to happen when you surround yourself with more people. And a mechanism that I used in Atlanta was Meetup. I don't even think I knew about Meetup in Knoxville, and I don't know how popular Meetup is today, but Meetup was a big deal to me when I was in Atlanta. I connected with the data science ATL group and started reading all the books to figure out how to make my mind more powerful, because I wanted to get out of what I learned growing up in Memphis, and that is trading your time for money. I wanted to figure out how to make more money with my mind. And that's what we all do as developers. So the tools I started with were actually Excel. I learned Excel from Mr. Excel on YouTube, and I got really good at it. And I got so good at it that I got to fight for a full-time position in supply chain optimization. And the reason I've titled this "It's Better When You're the Buyer," it's like people wanted me to work on their team halfway through my internship because of what I was doing with Excel, believe it or not. I got really good at that tool. But in the supply chain group on the business side, we were using Microsoft Access. So this is my first exposure to a database-like tool. And what that showed me is how to clean data for presentation. And the presentation we were doing at the time was Excel. But I'd known about Tableau from school. So in 2011 or 12, I got to create a distribution map in Tableau using the output from our supply chain optimization models and present that to people. And that made a huge impact on the business. And that really opened my eyes to the power of data visualization. Then I sort of capped out my skills on the business side of the house. I needed to go pro. I needed to get into the IT team if I was gonna really leverage technology. And this is where I got access to SQL Server. So I was still working with Tableau, but I was leveraging SQL Server, and I got involved with the SQL Saturday community. I read all the books on SQL, and I studied SQL through Stanford online. So after graduating, you know, this community is very familiar with self-paced learning. And at the time, there were not the resources that we have today, but at that time there still were resources. And I was learning through even Stanford then, which felt like a cheat. It's like, how did I get to learn through Stanford? It was great, and I still remember that SQL course. But eventually, I sort of capped out on my knowledge or my application of my knowledge within the IT team at Georgia Pacific, and I made the commitment to dive headfirst in the heart of tech in San Francisco. So Atlanta in the South, like not the edgiest tech community at the time. Fantastic for data science and even machine learning then, but San Francisco was where I was at, and I needed to be near people. Again, we weren't in the time that we are now where we can connect virtually with anyone. I needed to be close to the people. So I moved over to San Francisco and worked with Slalom Consulting there. And there I was less the engineer I was at Georgia Pacific, less like building the data pipelines. And they actually put me on projects where I just built dashboards. And I was like, okay, fine, you want me to build dashboards? I need to learn how to build great dashboards. So I read all the books. I read Tufte, I read Few. I started a Tableau user group at Berkeley. Cole Nussbaumer was in San Francisco, so I got to chat with her. I also had to ditch my PC, you know, my beloved PC that I learned Excel on. I had to ditch that for a Mac and, you know, adopt Sublime Text and learn JavaScript and GitHub and all of those things. But at a point, San Francisco was clearly not the place for me. I was making more money, but I wasn't happy. I felt like I had learned skills that I could take with me anywhere, and I was down to prove that to myself. So I said, like, see you later to the US, and I shipped out to Australia, and I tried pitching my skills to cities throughout Asia Pacific. People said Melbourne was like the San Francisco of Australia. Maybe that's so, but it's very different from San Francisco. Thankfully, there were Tableau communities throughout New Zealand, Melbourne, Sydney, and even Brisbane. So I spoke throughout the communities there, and I started, you know, formalizing or understanding the underpinnings of why my designs in San Francisco worked. And I did that through more online learning channels. Interaction Design Foundation was one that I spent a lot of time diving deeply into. And I interacted with the communities through the Interaction Design Foundation in Brisbane, actually. As a sort of new freelancer, I was also trying to find myself. Like, what do I do? People aren't hiring me for Tableau work. So I learned how to do video editing, made a blog post. I even created a course on Teachable. So I've done paid video editing work, which is very interesting. And I listen to podcasts, right? I couldn't travel with my books that I'd been so dependent on for so long. I needed podcasts, and thankfully they were a thing then, and still are very much a thing, but they were pretty new when I was traveling. At a point though, you know, the funds dried up and the video editing was not doing its thing. So I was almost out of options, and I remember I was, you know, considering going back to the States when I was in Bali, but I barely had enough cash to get there. And at that point, someone who worked at Tableau, Kelly Hoda at the time, she actually asked if I would be open to doing a Tableau gig with IBM in Brisbane. I was like, yes, let's do this, to extend my runway a little bit and like leverage my skills, right? I love working with Tableau. I love putting the knowledge that I've accumulated for so long to use. And it was a perfect opportunity to work with IBM in Brisbane. It also sounded really nice. So I did that, and the SQL skills came into play again. After that gig was up, I did want to go back to the other side of the world The time zone difference was a bummer. And when I got back to this side of the world, I discovered a platform called Upwork. And this was a godsend for me because on Upwork, I could be a remote freelancer and people weren't going to ask me to show up on site like they did when I was in Australia and New Zealand. They were more comfortable with remote work in 2019, which sounds like so long ago. But on Upwork, I pitched my tent as a Tableau developer there, and I started doing little gigs, and I traded Sketch for Figma, and I started embracing little indie development platforms and teaching platforms like Learn UI Design that you see their logo there, to continue to beef up my design skills. After I got a little bit of traction on Upwork, I wanted to dig my heels in and not just be a Tableau developer, but be a Tableau developer with some flexibility, right? People are asking for D3 on Upwork. People are asking for a little bit of JavaScript interaction through a portal. Great. I need to bring my skill. I need to brush up on my skills, and JavaScript's come a long way. D3's come a long way. And we're no longer using Sublime Text, although you can. I'm using Visual Studio Code now. So when I was down in Santiago, I'm still in Santiago, I was spending a lot of time surrounding Tableau with these skills that I've developed over so many years. And again, going through a lot of online learning through indie teachers. And now I'm at a point where my clients are happy, and I'm sharing some of my work publicly now, and I'm doing that with the React library, and I will be, I'm already showing some of my D3 work, but I'll be integrating that more with Tableau in the future. And I'm really doing this to try and encourage others to embrace the tech that we can surround or wrap Tableau with. And it's really exciting. And DBT is another one that I've started embracing as an analytics engineer that people might not know about, but that's where we bring software development practices to our SQL code. And I'm also going to be doing that with Tableau and GitHub. I think that was mentioned in a previous slide. So anyway, I just say this to speak to the fact that the learning never stops, and it's taken me all around the world, and it's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to where I go in the future with Thinkific and some YouTube videos that I'll be putting out in the coming months. So that's my journey. I'd love to hear questions that you might have about it.
Thank you. That's really inspiring. And I like how your conclusion is that the learning never stops. And that's true, in every journey, I feel like always something new to learn or to experience or play with if you have some fun and free time. So thank you for sharing it. It's really interesting. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A box. We are going to hear from Anya, but after we will come back with the two presenters to ask questions live. So the next one is Anya. Anya, I got to know you actually when we ran the developer program mini challenges. And I think you were one of the first participants, and Anya kept coming back. She was doing all the submission, and I was oh, I did level 1 and I did level 2. And what about level 3? And she kept going. I think you did all the mini challenges this summer. And it was just awesome to see you through the journey and going. I think you published multiple blog posts, and now you are a DataDev ambassador. So we just launched it last year. Yes. And you need to show your T-Rex as well. What's his name again? So Anya?
His name is Frankie. Just a second.
Where is Frankie? Robert has a dog and Anya has a T-Rex.
He's still in a little bit of a Christmassy mode. But he's a little bit shy today, so I will just sit somewhere here.
We should do another poll. Like, are you more a dog person or a T-Rex person?
Or a T-Rex person, indeed. Yeah, that will be a suitable question.
So you are one of the first DataDev ambassadors, and really excited to like see and learn more about all the tips you have for the community to become a DataDev. So the Zoom call is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting. It was very nice. It's always a tricky thing to talk about yourself. So I wanted to focus more on the things I learned during the journey and share the things I learned and share some tips along the way. So again, welcome to the user group, and my name is Anya Provestova, as Gigi said. I'm a current Tableau DataDev ambassador, and also I'm a data analytics consultant at the Information Lab UK, part of the Data School program. And today I'm going to talk about how I started using Tableau developer tools and share some tips. But first, I want to talk about who am I actually. So hi, my name is Anya, and I have background in economics, art history, and photojournalism. And I started using Tableau developer tools back in, I think it was March 2020. I think that's, Gigi can correct me, but I think that's where roughly the mini challenges started, or maybe later in April. But that was indeed the point where I started really focusing on how to use all these different tools, to learn about what tools were out there. And then I was selected as a DataDev ambassador in August 2020, so last year. And you can see that my background is in economics, art history, and photojournalism. So you don't even need to have a computer science degree to become a data dev. It might be helpful. I had a little bit of a knowledge of Python mostly before I started looking into tools, but I didn't have any experience in developing software, for example, or doing some kind of web development. And during my journey with the tools, so you might ask, you didn't really work with them, so why did you get interested in this? So I really like exploring new things. Say in one of my previous roles, I had a process which was really time consuming and took a couple of hours of all different employees in my team, and I wanted to understand how to automate it. So I wrote a little bit of a script in Python that was scraping different websites and bringing the data together, and it was saving, I think, about 10 hours per week for the team. So I really got interested in how to automate different processes, especially manual processes. And then also I do like solving puzzles. So I think working on different development with different development tools, it really helps you to put this solving puzzles mindset to work and understand how to make certain bugs go away, or how to structure algorithms to tell the program to do certain things in certain order. So I think these three features in different projects really helped me to get interested in developer tools. And I agree very much with Robert. It's always a continuous learning process. So you never stop learning new language or new tool or new API. And that's really interesting for me, always discovering new things, even about the APIs you might say that you know quite well. And what did I learn along the way? So first, I have never heard about, well, no, I heard about JavaScript. I have never used JavaScript before. So working with different APIs really helped me to understand a little bit better about the basics of JavaScript, how it's structured, how you should write your scripts in it, and also the basics of web development, especially when you work, for example, with embedding Tableau dashboards or building even the some tools around Tableau in the web environment. Then I obviously learned how to build different custom tools in Tableau. So how can you use all these APIs to extend the functionality that's already coming out of the box? Because Tableau is a powerful tool and it allows you to do many things, but then you always want to take it a little bit further and think, okay, but if I want to do this custom project, or if I want to solve a particular challenge that the client has, how can I make it? How can I build it? And APIs are very useful there. And the last thing, and I think it's actually quite important, I learned to explain how to explain better some complex technical concepts to different audiences. If I'm talking to people, say, at the webinar, they may not know how to use API, what is an API, so you need to understand how to explain these things to them better. But if I'm talking, for example, to my colleagues at the information lab, they do know about these things a little bit more, so I can maybe go deeper in different topics. So that was a very useful thing to learn, and I will mention how I use these skills a little bit further when I start talking about my experiences with the tools. So some of the tips I can share along the way, how to start using the developer tools. The very first one is joining Tableau Developer Program, and that's, I think, the best thing you can do, and you have to do this if you want to develop your skills using all these different APIs, because that will give you several things. Being a part of the program gives you access to all the updates, all the news related to different APIs and tools, but it also gives you access to your personal Tableau online sandbox website where you can experiment with different tools, build your projects, develop your skills, break something. Don't worry about breaking the real life server, and just try and experiment with the tools. And also it gives you access to Slack community where you can ask questions. Don't be afraid, don't be intimidated by people maybe with more experience in this field. Just try to learn as much as possible. And also it's great, even if you're not asking questions, you can read questions other people ask and learn from their experiences and how they solve different issues. So I think these are two greatest things you can get if you become a part of the Tableau Developer Program. My next tip is don't overthink and start small. So every time, at least in my case, for example, every time I think about learning something, I think, oh my God, I will learn this, and then I will build this complex project, and it will do 15 different things, and it will solve all my problems. And you start doing this, and you think, oh, it's too much, I don't understand how to start it, and then you can get bored and not interested. So always start small and think about building a project that does only one thing, but does it well. And so you can understand how this tool works that you're going to learn. So in my case, for example, I remember that I was interested in understanding how Tableau dashboard extensions work, but you always see something really complex created by people with a lot of experience. So you think, I don't understand how I can even approach building this. So as an example, I can show you the extensions I built for one of the mini challenges. So this extension is very simple. It just updates the date range. So you can see now at the moment, the date range is May 17 to May 18. So if I bring the extension to the dashboard, this extension is going to update this date range to the year from now. So if I click open, and you can see now that my date range is updated for the period a year from now. So quite a simple extension, doesn't do something groundbreaking, but it allowed me to understand how extensions are structured, what kind of documents I need to create, what kind of code I need to write, how to write it, how to tell Tableau to do certain things. So that was a great example of a small project that teaches you one tool at a time. Again, similar to the previous tip, focus on one tool at a time. Try not to spread attention to try and learn everything that's out there in Tableau Developer Toolbox. So again, here, participation in mini challenges was a great idea, because I always wanted to learn more about these different tools, but maybe there was not enough time, or you don't really know where to start. So participating in these mini challenges give you this very nice structure. There were 18 challenges, and they were split in 3 different levels. So you can start from the very beginner, follow even some guided instructions how to build certain things. So for example, I have now worked with webhooks, and one of the mini challenges was to create a webhook and post a tweet when the extract is failing, the refresh of an extract is failing on the server. So you can say that it sounds quite difficult, but actually following the guidelines from Tableau, I used Postman to create the webhook, and then I was testing it, and you can see that my extract failed on the server. And at the end, I had this tweet posted on my Twitter account saying that the extract failed. It turned out to be quite easy, but it was very exciting. I don't know, I felt like a child when my tweet was working and everything was working like a clockwork, because it sounded, when you read about it, it sounded very difficult, but because it was just 2 weeks focusing on one tool, I actually was able to understand better how the webhooks work and try to set it up. Something simple, but when it works, it's really just pure joy. My next tip is try to solve a practical challenge. So, for example, you want to learn a certain API, a certain tool, but you don't know really where to start and how to approach it. Learning about the tool for the sake of learning it might give you an idea about this tool, but then you don't really know, so what's the practical use case? So I can give an example here of me learning the metadata API. So I worked on one of the projects before, and I worked with many different workbooks created in Tableau by other people. And there were a lot of different calculated fields. Some of them were used, some of them were duplications, some of them weren't working. And I spent a lot of time going through all the workbooks and trying to understand what's working, why do I need certain fields, maybe I should remove some of them. So doing just the auditing of all these workbooks. And then I learned about the metadata API, and I got this idea of using this metadata API to build a so-called data dictionary. So for example, that's my Tableau online server, and I just went into the metadata, so using the GraphQL interface, and I just wrote the query in this interface, ran it, got the response with all the calculated fields in my workbooks. So obviously this is just my dummy workbooks, it's not the real project. But the idea is there that you can create this query, get all the calculated fields and the related workbooks, the dashboards, all the data sources, and then create a simple list of calculated fields where you can very quickly understand what do you have in each workbook, how do these calculated fields calculated, if there are any descriptions to them, if there are any maybe data warnings. So all these different things can be displayed very quickly in this tabular format. And that gave me an idea that next time when I'm going to work on a very complex project with the workbooks I have never built before, they were built by other people, I might leverage some functionality of the metadata API and just build something similar, something like this data dictionary I built as just an idea to solve a question I had before. Another tip here I want to give is conquering your imposter syndrome. And that's quite an infamous issue people have, especially when they're starting learning about things. And it might be intimidating when you want to start learning about something, you watch all these different YouTube videos, read blogs, and you think, oh my God, people are creating this complex, great project. I won't be able to do this. They just know too many things. I will never be able to learn this. And sometimes people get intimidated and they don't really go further. They just think that they don't really know how to approach this. But I would say, rather than being intimidated, be inspired by the community and the projects people put out there, and maybe things like articles or videos people share. And I can just say a big thank you to the community for definitely creating all this content, all these videos, the articles. And Robert, I have your blog here as well, because it's such a great resource to learn about how to build all these different cool projects with JavaScript and Tableau, the videos on YouTube and the developer groups, because when you look at what other people are doing, you get inspired. I would focus on being inspired rather than being intimidated, and just try to persevere and go further, because everyone started somewhere. And if you don't know something now, You just need to spend a little bit more time, and tomorrow you will learn about all these different things you are not familiar today. And the sixth tip for me is once you learned, once you built something, share it with the community, contribute to the community and share it with maybe in the form of a blog, a website. So for example, I started writing about the projects I was doing for the mini challenges in my blog. First of all, for myself, because I didn't want to forget how I built these things, how I wrote a certain code. I started also talking at webinars, sharing the projects I did, explaining how I built them. Sometimes I was invited to talk to webinar and there was no certain topic set. So I was saying, well, I was going to look at how to build certain things. For example, geocoding in Tableau Prep using Python. So I said, well, let's talk about this. And so that inspired me to actually learn and look at this project rather than just talking about the same things again and again. I also was really honored and really happy to be selected the Tableau ambassador, and I think that inspired me to share even more and participate in different events and share more blogs to contribute to the community and let other people know how they can do certain things with all these different tools. And I also started a Tableau DataDev happy hour inspired by the brain dates that I participated in during the Tableau conference last year in October. And that's the place where people can drop in every month and just ask any questions they might have about the different tools, how to get started, where to get some more information, some practice, and just anything really about the developer tools. And that's how I am trying to give back to the community. And then the last tip I want to share with you is quite important, I think. Don't forget to have fun. We always start something and we're not feeling confident in our skills. We see other people doing things much better. Don't forget to have fun along the way, because in no time, really, if you spend some, if you apply some time, some knowledge to your learning, you will be just sliding through the process and you will know all about the tools and you will know how to use them and you will feel much more confident. But don't forget to have fun, because we sometimes just focus on the technical side of the project without actually just enjoying that this learning process. And just wanted to close this talking about myself, looking a little bit forward. So I was sharing how I was learning the tools. So in this new 2021 year, I would like to participate in some of the DataDev Bingo projects. So Gigi mentioned it earlier. That's a reimagination of these mini challenges that I mentioned quite a few times. And if you want to know about the developer tools, if you want to learn, I would highly recommend to look at this DataDev Bingo project, because again, it gives you different levels of complexity to start with, and a really great place to learn about the tools. Want to continue writing more about the projects I'm building, sharing some tips in the happy hour as well. So next one is on the 4th of February. And then I also want to focus this year on the metadata API. So I want to really deep dive and understand how to work with it better and build different projects related to that. And I think we can share then later the links in the chat, but these are some of the resources I was thinking I can share to start again looking at these tools. Again, mentioning the developer programs, the documentation is out there, and the Bingo projects as well are quite useful. And that's it from me. Gigi, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to take them.
Perfect. Thank you, Anya. I like us how you with Robert, the common thread about learning and how learning never stops. And we all start somewhere, because we all starting somewhere new and we don't know anything, because it's a new skills, a new language, programmation language, and we are all beginners in certain areas. So that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing, Anya, all these tips. And I can say by myself, I can recognize myself in some of your tips. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Robert, for joining as well. Anya, can you put the links for your resources links in the chat? Now we are going to take some questions, and I think the first one is for you, Anya. Yeah, because you are one of the first DataDev ambassadors for 2020. Can you share your tips as well, how like people can become DataDev ambassadors? What did you do to become DataDev ambassador? Do you have any tips to share to the community on becoming one?
That will sound very bad maybe, but just because of the situation last year and because I was locked at home, I really had time finally to look at all these projects. And I think not only, I mean, the first step is obviously learn about all these things, but I think the main thing is just try and share your knowledge with others. Say, again, as I said, I started writing the blog just because I wanted to remember how I built these things, but also because I was asked by one of my colleagues how to do certain things, and I thought, well, instead of telling it to individual people, I would rather write it and post it as a blog so other people can benefit. And there is this concept of learning in public. So even if you feel that you're just starting, you're not sure that you have everything perfectly set up in your project, still I would encourage to share and get the comments and suggestions from the community, because that's how we learn as well. So I think maybe being more active and share your knowledge in the community, one of the first steps, I think, whether it's blogs or videos, whatever is comfortable for you.
Yeah, I agree with you. Is helping. I think ambassadors is helping each other, helping the community to grow, helping community to learn new skills by blog posts or even participating in the community forums or on Twitter as well, sharing to other people that want to learn and help each other. So Robert and Anya, you both have blogs, I think. Do you have any tips about writing blog posts on technical topics? Do you have key points and anything in general? How do you start a blog if you don't have anything right now?
I can speak to my process because it's a tough one. I do try to break down technical things so that other people can pick them up, because I felt like that's been a barrier for a lot of people getting going. And my process is like, I have to fix a problem. I have an objective, and from that objective, I like reverse engineer it all the way to the start and try to unpack it back to the point where you are like installing certain packages, and I'll put GIFs on my blog posts, and I might inline videos if a video is necessary, and where there's code, I'll put the code in the blog post so you can copy and paste it. When you've read as many blog posts as we have, you start to get an appreciation for blog posts developed in a certain way. So trying to mimic those blog posts that have been a pleasure to walk through, tutorial style, is what I try to mimic in my blogs.
Perfect. Thanks.
Anya, what about you?
Yeah, I agree about the tutorial style as well. I enjoy going step by step when I'm learning something, and I try to do that. And I try to, even though now I know a little bit more about the tools, I always try to put myself back in the shoes before I learned this. Because I remember I was reading someone's blog and people assumed a certain level of knowledge, which I didn't have. And that was a little bit infuriating at times, because I just couldn't understand what I should be doing. So I always try to get back and think, okay, is it clear for people who have never heard about it? If it's clear for you, then you can skip it. But if not, then I will explain a little bit. So I always try to put myself back into the shoes of person who have never worked with these tools.
Yeah,
that's true. I think how-to resources are really helpful, and also, I think if you have a gap in your document, like if you're like learning about something and you see a gap, I think it's also the place as well. You're like, oh, I wish when I was learning X, Y, and Z, I had bad resources, and then you're like trying to put you out there. Speaking of automation, have you done any development with Tableau Prep, or do you primarily use API? I was curious of setup for your Tableau development environment, config, and IDE. So I think Anya, you mentioned Tableau Prep, on your presentation, on one of your projects. So maybe you can.
Yeah, I did work with Tableau Prep in terms of using Python scripts inside Tableau Prep. So that requires running the TabPy, the framework that allows Python script to communicate with the Tableau desktop as well. In that case, it was Tableau Prep. So I was connecting to APIs, extracting the foreign exchange rates, and then converting the sales values directly inside of the Tableau Prep flow using the script. Yeah.
Robert, did you use Prep? I don't know if you remember seeing Prep on your.
I mean, I've used Prep, but it's not a part of my development environment. Mm-hmm. I've used the command line to automate Tableau Prep. So you can get the data management add-on in server to run Prep for you, or you can write a job that's going to execute Prep on a schedule. So I've done that, and the setup for me was I had to have an AWS like S3 machine, basically like a little virtual machine that had a small command line script in it, and that was on a schedule, and that script was going to execute this code that was going to run my prep job. And that was me sort of hacking the data management add-on. Yeah.
And what is your setup for Tableau development work? I think Robert, you say you were using Visual Studio Code. Did you have any of the things to recommend for people if they are starting their journey?
Yeah, I've got a Mac. I run Visual Studio Code, and I often use the terminal from within Visual Studio Code so that I can be in Visual Studio Code, and I use npm to install my packages instead of Yarn. That's it. Sometimes Netlify to host, deploy my projects so that other people can access them, and GitHub for version control and hosting repositories.
Yeah, I have the same.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think you can also share maybe your GitHub account as well. So people, I think you post a few projects there. I think it's interesting as well for people to follow you on GitHub. So let's see if we have other questions. So why have you stuck with Tableau the whole time? I think it's the question, Robert, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of odd jobs throughout my professional career, but the reason I haven't chose to go with, let's say, D3 is that I'm a remote freelancer. So anyone interested in going freelance or remote or whatnot, it is much harder to find a team that has what's necessary to support D3 workflow. They have to have the engineering team and the code review processes in place. And some companies do have this, but I find the barrier to entry with people looking to leverage Tableau, like people who want to see their data. As long as they have Tableau, you're good to go. And the barrier to entry there is pretty low. So if you've got Tableau skills, you've you're much closer to getting that gig. And as a freelancer, like that's very important. So the market is much larger for Tableau, and it's continued to expand in my mind. And when you couple it with tech skills, you're not even limited by Tableau. It just becomes a benefit. So I've stuck with it. I'm very thankful for it.
So another question came up. So Robert shared a bunch of books and podcasts. So first, Robert, do you have them somewhere for people to access them? Because I think you have really interesting books, recommendation, and podcasts. And also, Anya, do you have any books recommendation or podcast or other blog maybe you want to share for people starting their journey?
I don't have that list anywhere, but this is being recorded. Yes. So you can just go back through, and actually let me grab a link. So I made my presentation in Figma. Okay. And I can actually share a link with everybody.
Perfect.
So
Anya,
I don't really have any books. I was actually noting down some of the books that Robert shared. Yeah, I don't really have any books. I was really just reading, just Googling a lot and reading different blogs and frequently compiling different blogs, knowledge from different blogs together to understand how to build something. And I really liked some of the step-by-step guides that are provided in mini challenges. That was very helpful.
And to be honest, that was like a fraction of the books that I've gone through. My Audible has like 80 nonfiction books on it. So again, the learning never stops. But I think that's like, if you like learning, tech is a good place for you. Yeah, I think like really important books though, like Deep Work, So Good They Can't Ignore You is not a bad one. Grit and Mindset. Mindset might be the most important. And I got to meet Carol Dweck when I was in the West Coast. But anyway, like mindset basically says like there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And like if you have a growth mindset, like you can really like learn anything. It's just a matter of like putting in the reps. So it's very encouraging for people interested in learning this stuff. It is possible.
Thank you. I'm taking notes as well. At the time, I'm like, that's my 2021 resolutions to read more books. So I wrote them down. I don't think I read any of them. So I think that's another questions. If you were to learn DataDev all over again, what would you do differently? That's a very interesting question. I don't know, maybe Robert, you want to go first and then Anya?
Okay. Yeah, and the point on books, I'd say get an Audible subscription and get used to listening to things on 2x speed. That'll help. And then as like starting over, I'm interested in front-end code. So I'm interested in things that people see and interact with on the browser. So I would look for, like, if I could just, do this again, I'd probably throw myself into some sort of boot camp to go deep on JavaScript. That's me, because if you're confident in your foundation, then you have free reign. But it's taken me a long time to get confident in my ability. If I wanted to supercharge that or shortcut it, then I might commit to a 3-month boot camp and then be free to develop whatever I want.
Yeah, I have a similar actually note, because as I said, I knew Python a little bit before, but I have never worked with JavaScript, and I think it would have been a better idea to just dedicate a little bit of time to understand the basics of JavaScript and then start looking at the projects, because I just dived into, say, JavaScript API. So what are all these curly brackets doing here? So that was a little bit of a culture shock. So I think I would do something like that as well, learn more about the JavaScript first.
Perfect. We have, by the way, we have a Slack channel on our Slack workspace. We have a channel for everyone that is a coding beginner. So everyone that is starting, they don't know code. We have a Slack channel where we put resources from time to time. And I think we have about 40 people there. So feel free to join the Slack channel as well on our workspace. I think it's Code Newbie, or you can find it. It's one of the multiple channels we have, and we have resources there as well if you are getting started and you don't know how to code. So that's it for your questions. I just want to quickly remind you that we launched 2 weeks ago the DataDev Bingo. So that's a great place if you are getting started as well. We have how-to tutorials there as well and step-by-step. So be sure to do it, to do the DataDev challenges. And I tweeted, I think yesterday, say that the first person to call out bingo this week is winning one of the flexes. I don't know, where's my T-Rex? Ah, here. It's not Frankie, but it's another one. So if you have the first one to call bingo this week, you can redeem a T-Rex plushie. For Flex the T-Rex plushie. So be sure to reclaim your prize. We haven't seen bingo yet on Twitter, but I'm looking for it. So if you're on Twitter, be sure to use the hashtag DataDev when you want to call out bingo. And that's it for today. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for Anya and Robert for your presentation. I think you inspired multiple people, and I'm really excited to work with you in the future, and I expect a lot of collaboration for 2021. Thank you so much for taking the time and putting your effort in this presentation. Thank you. I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.